And away we go. We are officially, hopefully, here, live in a second here. Just waiting for this to pop in. There we go. It looks like we are just getting started right now. And just as always, I'm going to just kind of allow everyone to start popping in. So, um, yeah, jump in the comments. Let me know if you can hear me well. As always, I think I've got a lot of my settings saved to make sure that I sound all right. So I will see what we got here. Happy Easter, yes, happy Easter. I don't know if anybody else is already getting the whole, you know, you overate, you got a lot of food in you. You have to leave that extra button unbuttoned on the pants tonight. Just with all the food and stuff like that. Um, Good family times and all that. I'm gonna see if I can give myself a little boost here. There we go. I can hear myself. I'm gonna go through and get the disclaimers out of the way while we wait for people to come into here. It is also posted, pinned in the comments as well, just for legal sake, as far as when it comes to names and all of that. Um, so we'll just start with the individuals named or referenced in this video are presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. All statements made are based on publicly available information, personal investigation, and witness accounts. This content is intended for informational and investigative purposes only. Also, if you are a friend or family of Jodi, or tonight we'll be discussing some Jackie Folkerts as well. Please note we will be discussing sensitive information that will be hard or traumatic to hear. Viewer discretion is advised. So we're gonna see. Let's see here. Sounds good. Sounds good. I kind of had a few quick last minute technical difficulties, so we kind of just set the camera as is, and we'll just kind of rock this. I'm getting a new. We're kind of working on a new podcast studio, so that way we can actually bring in some guests, because we do actually have pretty cool, guests that is, willing to come on and talk to us. And so I kind of got to get a setup with two chairs and the whole 9 yards, and maybe we'll kind of Joe Rogan it a little bit, but I got to see how I want to style the whole Flip Investigates vibe out for that kind of stuff. And so it'll get interesting. But while I'm at it, if anybody that is watching, knows different things, or anything in the case that would be interesting, you are welcome to contact me or my team in case you want to, come on the podcast, and it would make for some interesting information, just to give people kind of so they can see for their eyes when they hear it from a direct witness or someone involved in something. And so the one we've got lined up, we're trying to obviously keep them so they're not scared off or anything, so they will be confidential, but they will, we'll kind of work on some things on masking their voice and everything. And so that'll be coming up, once we can get the studio laid out. Otherwise I'll just lay it out here. But yeah, so we'll kind of give it a second here just to make sure everyone rolls in now that it's 7:04. Yeah, everyone's starting to kind of pile in. Yeah, I actually, a funny one with Easter today, as parents, obviously you have to hide all the eggs for the kids to hide and whatnot when you have those kind of gatherings with family. And we had almost 20 kids between my cousins and all of us today. And when I'm in charge, I guess I'm no longer in charge as much for hiding the eggs. I I hid a couple eggs using some of the tactics that I know, as far as investigating and stuff like that. And an interesting one that I did today was I kind of pulled a tactic from this case, and I took the golden egg, one of the main eggs that the kids are after or whatever, and I put it somewhere where they all will start when they start their search. So none of them will just think, going back to the start of things. And I set it just blatant, but right where they started, and none of them found it. Like it actually, I even like started to kind of hint at it, and they still didn't find it until I pointed it out later, and I was like, well, that kind of sums up some of the stuff that I've been in, dealing with in my case and whatnot. But I had like 4 or 5 other places I put eggs, and the kids couldn't find those either, and everyone's like, yeah, you're making it too hard. So what's up, Keegan? How's it going? And so yeah, we'll get into things. So our hunt rate this week or the past couple weeks, has actually been trying to find the identity of our primary suspect. He's the primary person that all our witnesses have kind of told us is the trigger person, and he goes by the mysterious name of Arkansas Bob. And so we've collected, a lot. We've actually talked to so many people that all remember him. They all tell us kind of the same little things of, different looks and different things that they remember, but no one ever could figure out what his real first name was. Um, and so it gets interesting. We had a pretty big witness that tried to kind of tell us, hey, the person that you're looking for, his name is Mike. Um, and you know, I don't know. It's that made it interesting because we have to actually watch out at this point in the case. There's a lot of people interjecting, and this is the exact thing that they did back in 1995. Is they would interject and pay people to call in, or get people to try and throw false reports about things to try and throw them off the trail, or to try and, I don't know, just distort and mess with everything. And so we have to be careful with certain things that we're told. I'm definitely all ears, and I'm always open to listen to anything. Even I've had some people come up to me with, some things that are off of what we've found, but I'm still willing to listen to everybody, just because no one's been heard. Everyone's always said something, and it's always ignored, or you know just sloppy work. There's just so much, and it's gotten interesting the past 2 weeks. I'll tell you. I posted a post on there, and some of you that follow me on my Facebook and stuff, I posted a couple of photos. They were just some random ones of a particular farm in Rudd, Iowa, and really, I kind of use a specific tactic for a lot of posts like that, because it helps like showing a visual. Like, that's the biggest thing, because you're talking over 30 years ago. People are always like, I need to see pictures, I need to see faces, I need to see something to get their memory going. And a lot of people are like, I don't know what to tell you more that I remember. And then when I show them pictures like that, or I talk about a certain story from back then, all of a sudden they're just clicking, and they'll just blow up my phone, with just so many messages and all that, and so many leads that they remember. And that's what's helped us, keep moving forward. And actually, that was pretty, on kind of like we get so many like things for side quests and whatnot, for different cases and whatnot. And during those past 2 weeks, I did get called on by the I got to think of how to say this on live, um, but the illegal narcotics force, but like it's the state's version. And they were asking me some questions about a certain, recent activity of things that went on. And they just sat there and were just like, you know what? We can try and talk to a lot of these people, but nobody has trust in your area. But for some reason, they're like, you must have that trust, to where certain people are coming forward with certain things, and it helped them. It actually, and I'm hoping in the long run with that particular case that you know it helps there. But it's just that's just the thing that we've run into in our area. We do, clearly have a problem with something, and some of this is starting to make sense. Like the past 2 weeks, so many things hit that, like, I was almost like, this case just always, like, there's always something every week that just stuns me, like, and it's like, what more could stun me, what more could stun me? There's always just just crazy stuff, and it's just like, holy cow, like, and then there's some things that we ran into in this past 2 weeks where I was like, we overanalyzed something, and we skipped something major, and then luckily we were able to catch it and go back. But holy smokes, some big stuff was in the works. So I posted that post in Rud. It got a lot of attention. I didn't mean, and so I definitely apologize to the owners. I didn't mean to like draw that much attention to their specific property. Really, what we were mostly after is we had kind of a couple of leads of people saying, hey, somewhere on a farm that was used by the Gomez ring or some extension of it of some sort, uh, maybe one of the abduction vehicles, and it's just been sitting in some building for since back then. And so that was kind of our main goal. It wasn't that like we're saying, hey, this is where Jody's now at or whatever. We're still 100% all in on Birch Drive. And we actually found some potential, you know the steam's definitely gaining for why it was put at the driveway, which also puts in premeditation and a couple things that law enforcement may need to go forward. But I'm going to get into that later. Um, but yeah, and so what was actually kind of cool with that property. So and I definitely appreciate the Wood family for actually jumping on my comments and stuff like that to kind of put forward some like transparency, and I wish that like the other properties were like that, because for me it's not easy to like tell someone, because these properties totally changed. This property, it's beautiful now. Like they've done a great job with the property, and they'll transform. It is nothing like it used to be in 1995 or even 2000. What was it, 2012 or whatever, when they had some things go down there. And but and also on a side note, because there was a lot of people with rumors about tunnels and stuff like that, we did use a lot of historical lidar, and there really wasn't tunnels, or any signs of any type of tunnels per se. I do know that sometimes these guys would like bury tanks, like propane tanks and whatever else, and they'd plumb them into basements and stuff like that, and maybe stuff like that kind of, is where some rumors go with that. But we did know, I know there was a farm we were looking at on B20 that did actually have some form of it looked like a tunnel, but the barn was super super close to this old abandoned house, and so they didn't have to go very far, and it looked like it had imploded at one point and filled with water. And then they just kind of filled it in, because obviously that's kind of a nuisance. Um, but there's another, this whole web of everything goes all over. And as we found through the Rudd stuff, I mean, it just kept coming in. And for me that week, it was so insane because and I didn't post about it. I haven't been posting a lot lately because I've been so busy that like I'm really really honing in on the case specifically, because that's obviously top priority. And then we had a couple of these side quests, as we call them, that popped in. But um we I was with my band, and we played some sort of convention in St. Louis. And then I was struggling with fixing our band van that's been a 7-month saga. And I definitely will post, I will say I definitely do not endorse the Iowa Farm Bureau insurance as far as stuff goes, because they've been slapping me around for 7 months, and it's definitely made some things quite difficult with those lovely delay, whatever the insurance saying is, delay, deny, defend, whatever. And so I got to actually prove them wrong on something they claimed with experts. And so but still they want to fight, so it's the joys. But anywho, dealing with all that in a parking lot, fixing that van while dealing with all these different things. Then we talked about Rudd, and all of a sudden I was getting messages from people that were, I couldn't believe, messaged me, where they're like, hey, I want to set up a phone call I'm, so and so in this, that was a part of certain things, and I was just like, holy cow, like I didn't think, in our investigation, I'm not like a person, and I think that's what's actually helped. Just because of the way society is different from back in the day, like, if you're an investigator, all you had is you had to boldly call someone, or you had to boldly just knock on their door and be like, hey, what's up, and a lot of our tactics or techniques is not to bug people. It's more to just post things to get people to remember, and then just kind of leave that porch light on, like, hey, if you got information and you're comfortable with it, come forward to us. If you're not, that's fine. We respect it. We're not going to bug you. But the nice thing with a lot of the posts, even when we're slightly distorted or wrong on information, and sometimes I actually do that on purpose because there's some psychology in all this that I've been using. I've actually borrowed a few pages from a lot of these guys' books, as far as the blunt aggression on certain things, as well as using media to get at certain people and make them start to think like, are we looking at this location? Are we not? Are we doing a smoke show here? And so that's the interesting, kind of things. I kind of was spiked all the way back from when I was at the Highland Pits in the beginning of my investigation, when we started running into all these different games at the pond, at the pits there and everything. And that's when I said, you know what, if you guys are going to play games, let's roll then. And so, uh, I haven't quit. I haven't quit my, that whole game of things. But yeah, and so a lot of times, as I said, it's like a CIA tactic. You can throw some purposely wrong information out there, and that'll cause the right people to speak up, and they'll eventually be like, "Hey, I want to say something because I saw that you posted this, but here's the actual truth to that." And then it gets a conversation started, and then you're able to continue to get more and more information rather than just bluntly just knocking on the door like, "Hey, heard you were a part of this large crime ring. You want to talk about that?" No, like 99% of people will be like, no, I'm good. A lot of people have changed in 30 years and whatnot, and talking about rough things like that is not what they want to talk about. And so, yeah, it's kind of like our little shtick, um, and so that way it doesn't bother people as much. I know it has ticked some people off when we have mentioned certain names, which always ends up surprising us when, people start to get hostile on that, and different players come out. We're like, I did not think that was some type of involvement. I did not, see that coming, and it just kind of, yeah, we've run into that kind of stuff. But anywho, so Rudd, Iowa, we started getting people messaging us different things, and one of the ones, that was interesting is there was a specific big biker. It was another big Sons of Silence biker that is he has passed away and whatnot, but had mentioned some crazy stuff about the whole under concrete. Had mentioned that, and I was trying to see if we could get some sort of like, uh, you know I can't think of the wording to use on live, last minute confession type of thing, to see if, like, because I know for a fact so many people, that's the weird part that I've had, is so many bikers and stuff like that, especially in the Lake Mills, Joyce, all the way across to Northwood, all around. A lot of them are always saying, I know where she's buried. I know where she's buried. Um, but they can't tell anyone, and they'll never tell anyone. And I'm just like, how do all these guys know this? And some of the things we found out in the past 2 weeks is starting to tell us why there's so much involvement as far as bikers go. Um, but yeah, and so that took us, it took us on a few things with Rudd, Nora Springs, lots of different leads that we got in there. But I did see. Oh, thanks, Johnny. I did see that we had some people come forward with a very frightening name, and I will not be posting that name because of the danger level. But the the individual there, we ended up, well, I'll just call them person of interest, um, started to kind of show us a lot of different things that, boxes to check for. Oh my gosh, here we go, Arkansas, boom, here we go, drove a white truck, drove, all these different little things that we're checking off. But obviously, when we want to keep grinding, just in case we know, but we had essentially narrowed down where we're like, this guy is either him or a very, very close associate of him. And that's where, and I'm going to try and, I might be, I'm not going to drag on for 2 hours tonight and whatnot. But, and so I'm going to try and sum up as much as I can, but I also have to watch myself because I cannot say there's two different names tonight that I cannot accidentally slip on. So, um, but, yeah, and so that brought us, you know, somehow over to Ventura. And I feel like, as I always say, like everyone's always like, why is it this place this week? Why is it this place this week? And it's like, we are literally, you know, if I had a map back here, like those typical like crime scene investigators with the little string board and all that stuff, it'd be just massive. Like ours would just be just a big, just massive mess of connections of all over. But it it showed us some things that might actually help other cases. Whether the individual that we were looking at, as far as Arkansas Bob goes, whether he's an associate or the guy, they're this guy's involved in serious stuff and he is not in prison. Like, it is insane. Like, and that's the question: is there some protection here? Is there something going on? It's bizarre, but some of the things we started to uncover and unravel, it really it started to make some sense. But like, it's just baffles me from like, really, in northern Iowa we're gonna go to these great lengths on all this and whatnot. But anywho, I'll get back to that soon because I don't want to go right into all that yet. And so it brought us to Ventura. And so, um, and I'm trying to think how did that come about? We had gotten some lead where we were just kind of talking about, all right, well, what things in Ventura, were related to this case. And one of them was Jackie Folkert's 19-year-old in 1999. I don't know if any, some of you from the area may remember in 1999, Jackie Folkert's, um, she was a server at the Colony Inn, a restaurant that was in Ventura, Iowa. I think I've eaten there many, many years ago. I don't think it's around today, but it's pretty crazy. Yeah, and Amanda posted some stuff on there. But uh, it so Jackie Folkerts in 1999, they had talked about her reporting a man that had come, that had come into the Colony Inn and had discussed his involvement in Jodi's uh, case per se. And she gave a license plate number. And 3 weeks after giving that license plate number, she was horrifically assaulted and unalived in one of the most horrible, horrible things that I've read. And it sounded like, so like, and I'm still gathering things, so pardon me if I have anything that might be slightly distorted on this, because my iPad died with my main notes, so here I am with some handwritten stuff. But it was they ended up doing a DNA test, and there was about 108 swabs, because back in that time period they didn't have like people's DNA on file or anything. They actually had to go, they could test for DNA stuff, but they had to swab suspects and try and match it up and everything. And so they just said, they apparently had just looked for 118 people just directly linked, to her. And they ended up linking one guy, a 21-year-old, I believe his name is Brad Erdahl, who was a neighbor, I believe, of hers, and he was charged. And one of the interesting things that, you look at when you're an investigator is, you have to look at a specific suspect's like history. And like one of the weirdest things that I had with that, and I actually talked to people that were neighbors, you know, at that time and knew, both parties on that. And they were confused by a lot of this because they're just like, Brad was 21 years old. He didn't have the history. And if you're doing your home, if you do look at certain things, and viewer discretion heavily advised, if you look at some of the court paperwork on that, um, it was absolutely horrific to read. What was done, and to me, that is not normal of someone just out of the blue to just go from zero to level 1,000. Like it literally screamed everything that you would think for like a biker hit, like type of thing, just from just top to bottom. But one of the things that I did read that was interesting is over the years, I think that Brad had posted some, he had tried to have some sort of like, they had a couple different cases of appealing certain things. And in some of the wording in some of that, he was saying how the people that were investigating that did not do an appropriate job of exploring certain things. And what's interesting with we're on a live post that's interconnected, not just yeah. And then Amanda posts again, um but what was what was what was interesting was in his appeals he posted where basically he said the officers or DCI did not look properly for a white truck. They did not look for, they said that they didn't investigate far enough into apparently um, Jackie had been getting phone calls of harassment. Where does that sound familiar? Um, and that's very similar to Jodi. What Jodi got harassing phone calls like crazy, before things happen. We're getting an MO here, and so we pulled the background of our primary target, um, and under employment, it came up with the Colony Inn as a cook, and so that spooked me, like spooked us, like my whole team. I'm just like I don't like this. I don't like what we're seeing here. When Brad was talking about a white truck that they failed to look after, this guy has a white truck, as we had said. uh you know and one of the things that I have been studying is certain things when bikers do hits and crimes like that. They always get other people to, and they'll either force other people to do things with them, or they will have another biker join them in doing something. So that way, like for instance, there was one case I had read where one guy had unalived a guy using a pew pew, but they make the other biker with him also use his pew pew, so that way they can play games with the juries and the judge, and they're not dumb. And so there are some things that seem very, very, very concerning, as far as that goes. And we're still investigating, like, is there a tie with Brad and that particular person of interest? But one of the things that we sat there and was like, is this something we could still report? Like, check this person's DNA if it's on file, see if there's a match to that if they still have it, because they're that that would put a pretty big motive out there if suddenly she's calling in that license plate number, and boom, 3 weeks later, and the way when you read what happened, it's horrific. Like, and it's the exact MO of somebody that is like, you talked, and what they did straight up horrific, horrible, like one of the worst things I've read. And what I hope out of all of this is, you know, that we're able to maybe find that connection of Arkansas Bob, or whether this is an associate. This guy didn't stop, because we've had other people that we've had all sorts of messages coming in from all over about a certain person of interest, and one was even saying they linked him to Cyrilla Doyle, as well as potentially that girl in Arkansas, because he lived there. And another interesting fact that we saw with him was, right after Jackie Folkerts was unalived, he moved back to Arkansas immediately. 1999, boom, back to Arkansas. Um, and so that's odd why he would get out of the area and stay out of the area. But it's it's interesting. It got interesting. So one of the things that was big this week was out there. I sat there and I was like, this guy, if he's that savage of a human being and he has that savage of a history, yeah, when you're living with that, the sick, yeah, 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 Joe, that's it, it's the I don't know. I always heard things, but I never read for myself, and it's unbelievable, And so that got me to think, where I was like, okay, how would this guy get a job here, if he was involved in something like that? He either had to know somebody, and if he indeed is Arkansas Bob, if he is an associate of Arkansas Bob, he has to know somebody in order to get a job there. And so we did look into some records on, ownership, and one of the names that came up on the ownership was somebody that had the watch farm in Hanlintown. And that was one of the farms that I think, like once we started to look at different things, we overlooked that one, because I don't know how we overlooked, because I was like, originally I thought I saw a different name under ownership, but that could be something aired on land records where they confused it with a different one. But I talked to uh, yeah, yeah, no, that'd be interesting to link up with them if they're okay with that. I would love to help out in any way, and this could actually immensely. I mean, just this alone, what Jackie did for even reporting that license plate, because that's the other thing. Now that we have a background, we have the make, model, VIN of this vehicle. They should be able to look up the plate number, and if it matches her number, bingo bango, like, and so that's interesting. But the particular farm that it brought us to, because obviously there was a wife that ran it, and I think they separated, you know I don't know, it was like in like 99, 2001, 2003 or something like that. But the husband and whatnot at the time, um he had properties all over. Every time we were looking to a certain area, boom, there's his name. And if it's not his name, it was his limo service name. And if it wasn't the limo service name, it was uh you know some other business name linked to his special code name. And I won't drop that right now. But he Yeah, yeah, Amanda, that's kind of it's there's a bizarre MO to that. And yeah, there's certain things that make me feel there was more than one person involved, and one of it is some of the fluids that they were able to find. And unless that Brad guy was, I don't know, an Olympic person, there's absolutely no way one dude on that. But that's a whole nother discussion and whatnot. But yeah, if anyone does, if their family is interested, if not, I respect it. But I definitely, you know, we definitely have some developing leads coming off of that. But the farm that we ended up, it was like, so it was on Eagle Avenue. where we had the original white barn. I think that was kind of a farm that was, people had talked about where they're like, oh, there was something with honk in there. There was something with, all sorts of stuff at this, specific farm. And then you have one of the watch farms that were on the ends, of the different roads and whatnot. And this one, I don't know why, like, I didn't, when I was thrown off by land records, it was kind of like we shrugged it like, oh, there was just some guys that owned whatever. Well, the when we started to look back on some of the historical maps of that farm, that watch farm, we suddenly saw that someone had cut down trees and tried to block the driveway from anyone coming in. And then we've made calls and talked to some of the different witnesses that we know and all that, and they said, "Oh yeah, that guy that owned the colony or whatever, he had us go out to a Hanlontown farm out there, and we had to put a roof for some reason on a house that was just totally abandoned and just completely trashed to where it wasn't even worth probably being fixed up. And it had looked like they had put a garage and all sorts of stuff just slapped up. But as soon as we started to look into that, that's when we started to see a name come across for current ownership. And the current ownership ended up being somebody that was using their, I think it was their maiden name to try and hide something, and as soon as we did a people search on, like, current owners, because this is confusing, and I'm sorry if it sounds confusing because there's just so much detail in all this. So that prior owner of the colony had this farm, and they passed away. And I want to say they passed away in 2021, but somewhere before that, they had just handed the property over to specific individuals. And then when we did the search on those individuals, that is where we found a highly a name that just completely, like, I mean, it still stuns me. It still stuns me because we've been trying to figure out why. Why was Dan Reason's property on Birch, the first house built there, why was that chosen for the driveway? For where allegedly they put Jodi. And a lot of it was like, well, maybe they circled things back. And we, early on in the investigation, I kept having people tell me, like, a side story when I talk about Jodi's investigation. And I don't understand why a lot of people would tell me this story where I was like, okay. And that story has to do with Eric Reason. And Eric Reason is Dan Reason's son. And from many multiple sources, they said that and I don't have my notes in front of me, so I apologize if I have the year wrong, but it was around like 92, 91, 93, somewhere in there. A drunk driver was on South Carolina by those railroad tracks and took out Eric Reason and unalived him. And a gentleman that lived on South Carolina, and here's the craziest things happened to me, and I don't understand how or what. But the owner of my investment property that I bought is the one that took the fall. And the reason he did that was because the person who did this is a very rich, very prominent, very powerful person in our area. And what I fear, when trying to connect, different dots, and right now it's just speculations, but yes, well, Jenny, yeah, some people will be able to connect some dots here, but what I started to realize is that very powerful, prominent business owner, we started to look into them more and more, and little did we find they were a pilot. And then we started to see that there was lots of properties involved with them, or company. They'd come up with these LLCs and different ones that appeared to have lots and lots of warehouses, lots and lots of potential for a dirt landing pad for airplanes and all of that. And where I'm kind of getting at is it's starting to almost appear that that is a heavily hidden secret, and apparently the person that took the fall, they were able to bribe their way to give that person 6 years, somewhere around 6 years in prison is all, and they get something brand new every 2 years as payback for their doing the time and taking the fall. And you wonder, why would someone do that, take a fall like that, unless, they were obviously involved with some very dangerous organizations. And that started to make sense that somebody was a very, very, very crucial role in the web of these things. And then that started to kind of open us up on Charles City some. But what it almost appears is someone, in Dan Reason's family, I don't know, may have leaked, some information, and Jodi found out about who the real person was that killed that unalived Eric. And little did she know, if she was going to come forward with that information, how dangerous the man was and how dangerous the family was. And um and that's, you know, a typical biker retaliation. Like, you know, if he's the one that told the information to someone and he was supposed to stay quiet, and then they found out about everything, could that be why she's in his driveway? As a, this is your house you were building. This is the house if you're a person that's building a house, everyone wants to have that day where you build a custom house. Could it be that he was building that custom house and they put that there so that way every day when he walks out, he gets a reminder? That's a typical biker move there. So this, we've got some pretty serious stuff that's starting to kind of line up here, and yeah, and so this is kind of, things have just taken such a crazy turn. Just, and I had no idea that, it would start with that Rudd picture, and then all of a sudden all these people would come out of the blue to talk to us, and then somehow getting to Jackie Folkert's story, and how her story actually helped show us some major things that may help this case big time. It may help her case, and it may help these other cases that happened, with Cirilla Doyle. And then the question that starts to come in is, why are they not solving this? And that's one of the things I sat there and I was like, why? Somebody's obviously said things over the years. It's been 30 years of whatever. Why are these guys not coming forward? And obviously it's because they're rich, like, next level loaded. They've got the power. And then there's politics. And I didn't realize politics played another major role in this. So when you start to look at that family, you branch out and start to realize a lot of our leaders are related. A lot of them have some form of relation or friend connection. You start to see that they strategically put certain people running against other certain individuals, in order to get certain people forward. And and then a family member of them is, obviously they had a background in criminal justice, as well as um, political science, I believe. And they would know. I mean, that would help alone on some of the things that we have. So then that started to open us up on, let's look at their employees and employees they had at the time, and certain connections to everything. And it just keeps snowballing and snowballing and snowballing to where, you know, we might have something big here, and so, my biggest thing, today being Easter. Easter to some people means different things. To me, obviously, it's Jesus dying for our sins. We're all we're all not perfect. No one. There is no greater sin. All sin equal. That's what I personally believe. And some of these people are probably went to church today, with their families or whatever else. And to me, the only way that you can give it all up, whether you're religious or not, and I'm sorry if you're not, or what and whatnot, but when you read the Bible and read when Jesus was crucified, he had a unaliver next to him. And there's the verses that talk about where he says, as long as you are pure about what you have done and you believe in Jesus and cast everything that you've done out and give it all up to him, then he will die for your sins. And that's what, you know, a lot of that's about. Obviously goes beyond your bunnies and eggs and all that. But what I'm urging for those a part of this, now that things are starting to get out there, I would much rather some of these people go forward themselves rather than us have to sit there and push things forward, push things forward. If you are truly changed people, please come forward. The only way to actually be changed is to just let go of everything and be truthful. But and I know certain people are going to be watching from different accounts, or whatever else, and I'll probably get, if indeed that is, the Eric Reason story is one of the primary reasons why things happen. That is, I slipped up today on, not slipped up per se, but I dropped that story today, and so I did put forth the right protection over my family and myself, before going into all of this and everything. And so we are not, uh, you know, obviously I'm not going to get pushed around by some of these guys and whatnot. And I've already had people with unaliving threats to me, which to me, I laugh about. It's whatever it is. It's from my accident. I can't help it. I have no, my mind's broken when it comes to threats and fear. Thank PTSD and stuff for that. But, obviously my family and all of them, some of them don't even like watching my lives because they're, they don't want to hear what I've done and all that stuff. But yeah. And so, with that, I've kind of hopefully summed some of that up. I'll open it up if anyone has any questions. I'll try and answer what I can. And I really hope that I got through without slipping on certain information because I wanted to kind of hold back certain names, kind of in hopes too that certain ones see it and they start to see that, hey, it's been 30 years, cat's out of the bag, you know, um, it's time, but yeah, and yeah, I mean, they've had the 30 years. They've been able to go on the vacations. They've been able to have the political positions. They've been able to have, uh, just a lot of things, and Jodi didn't. Jodi didn't get to have that. Jackie Folkerts didn't get to have that. You know, they might have created a monster by, trying to hide one big thing, just snowballed and snowballed and snowballed, and it just turned into, they created a monster. And so I yeah, I mean there's so much detail in all of this. I'm trying to summarize it as best as I can without crossing certain lines and giving too much information. Ironically too, my iPad, decided tonight that it didn't want to charge when I had it all charged up with my notes, and so I kind of went off the heart tonight. So I'm sorry if any of it kind of rambled in any way, but yeah, and so yeah, no, and it's understandable, and that's what I say is like with me as far as like Christianity goes is just love people. It doesn't matter. There is love people, love God, love people. The only true two commands that God ever gave, um, according to the Bible and whatnot. And so, and I don't mean to preach in here because that's not some people's thing, and you have your opinions, and that's where God gave us the free will on that and everything. But does anyone remember our cousin Bill and Prudent? He was taken 3. I am still trying to connect because what we are told is Arkansas Bob had unalived 2 to 3 people prior to Jodi, and so that is one of the things that we are trying to see if there's connect. I mean, because one of the things that I just keep seeing is with the way these guys worked and the way that they knew certain things, I feel like because the airport was involved in things, and that's something I didn't really touch a lot on tonight, was um, I have noticed that, and that also that owner of the colony and that uh, side farm in Hanlon Town also had a property off the landing pad of the Mason City Airport where a plane could have its illegal narcotics land, and then they could throw the stuff over the fence to the storage barn or storage farm and then come back in to reboard. Or we had one where there was a current standing Mason City police officer. I pray to God that he was undercover during this, because a lot of signs are not showing undercover, especially because they haven't solved anything. I don't know where a guy goes undercover and then decides he's not undercover and doesn't have to move out of the area. But with having places along the lines of where the planes were landing, and they could drop things on the landing before things are checked. And so yeah, and all this will be replayed on my Facebook, and then we'll go on TikTok, and I'll try and kind of repeat what I have said on all this stuff. But it it's interesting. There's just so much to it, and I know I'm grinding as hard as I can to try and keep pushing things as forward as we can with the time that we have, and then try to give you guys as much as what we see, and a lot of things we still are looking. So yeah, we're still live for now. I will be, I think it's 9 o'clock. I'll be on TikTok and whatnot. But again, if anyone has any questions or anything like that, throw it out there, and I'll see if I can answer anything that I can. And yeah, it'll be interesting, as I've said that like 100 times. My pre-workout. I gotta keep myself awake tonight. All that food, it's just crazy. Yes, I mean, I sit every day waiting for someone to give me a call on anything, where it's like, hey, and we're still, I don't know. I was almost gonna see if we could, if there is something with that farm, because we were always told that the unaliving happened at a farm outside of Joyce, is what they always said. And this outside rural Hanlon town is almost like, it could be Hanlon town, it could be Fertile, but it also could be Joyce. It's like super weird where it's located. And so that a lot of our primary informants and stuff like that all said, they're like, wherever things happened at, there's a lot of evidence that's frozen in time, specifically because no one wants to touch it. And hopefully over that time, since those people had all experienced, hearing about that, hopefully that is, hasn't been tampered with, but obviously it's being watched. And we've passed on a couple of the different places to have the FBI watch those, and so not very smart if they do touch anything. Um, when you say really, really rich, how rich are they? I don't even know how to put a dollar amount to that one, and I don't know how to say it without I don't know, enough to where they have their own private planes, places in Florida. Some people were saying they had an operation with those cigarette boats in Florida, and then there was some way that they're finding ways to get that illegal narcotics and stuff from Florida and whatever back up here, and it may be continuing to this day. There's, obviously they had things in Arizona, and I actually had an interesting one I was watching about where like the cartel and Mexican mafia and all of them would have these runways on the sides of mountains in like New Mexico and Arizona, but they'd have to be very experienced private pilots to be able to land because these runways were like little 200-foot runways, and 200-foot runways is a very very short amount. Like you've got 200 feet, or you're gonna crash into trees, or you're gonna fly off a mountain or whatever. And that's where it almost makes me curious if one of their runners, because they did have a plane of somebody who had passed away on the side of a mountain in New Mexico, and makes me wonder if that's how something like that happened. But they've got a network. I mean, it's big. Obviously, this was part of a big distribution channel of something major. Anytime you talk to these people, they obviously, there are people that know, like, have known the top beginning to end of this whole thing, but no one wants to touch the name of Arkansas Bob. No one wants to touch the name of you know who allegedly hit Eric Reason. And it's very sensitive, and scared. Plans to expand to a daily spot. I don't know if I could do daily. I mean, like, just this weekly thing kind of gets tough with family and stuff like that. You know, I try to kind of put together as much as I can and all that, but we'll try and YouTube will pay. Yeah, it, we'll see. I think once I have my podcast studio, because I think then we'll try and take on some other cases as well. But this one means the world, obviously, and we want to be able to get this one in the bag for our area, and that's kind of the motivation that we have to even do this. And then we'll kind of see where it goes from there. I mean, obviously, that's where some of the haters, and that's what's also ironic. A lot of the haters that were very, very loud against us also in on that little good old boys club that they had going on. And that's, their good old boys club is kind of what, they might have known this dirty, dark secret, but they wanted certain people in certain political positions, and so they were helping keep it dusted under the rug. And that's what's gross. And that's also what's aided in this not being solved in 30 some years. And so it's just, I don't know. I don't like politics myself. Like I at one point I was into politics a bunch, and I think it's just gotten to where I saw the backside of politics, and like people getting bought out, people doing all these different things that I had even spoken, I think, at the uh down in Des Moines at the Capitol, and got to talk with all these people regarding like truck safety because of my crash, and coverages on people that get unalived from crashes or even medical malpractice. They're all kind of snowballed in one. So you get these big corporations and hospitals that are like, a person's life's only worth like 100 grand or whatever, and it's like, no, that should not be capped. And so I had to talk there, and I had people that I voted for look me in the face, look at the picture of my family, look at my crash scene photos of my mangled van and the people that passed away, and they looked at me and they're just like, well, this hospital's a big donor of mine, and I would lose a lot of my funding and whatever, therefore I cannot stand behind you. Goodbye. Like, it is just like, that totally goes against the whole party and everything, but it's all about you and your selfish whatever needs, I guess, or you, your friends, your whatever. And so I'm out on that, on politics. Like, I don't like that. I don't like wolves in sheep's clothing. This whole thing, they always talk about how they're the wolves den, the wolves, you know, they're the wolves in sheep's clothing in our area, and they brag about it. They had the bar in Grafton called the Wolves Den after that kind of stuff. Um, and I don't like that. Even my old band, well, I have my old shirt over here from Senseless Beauty, but our whole point was we were a metal band that was after the people that the church failed. And it was after, and we just heard so many wolves in sheep's clothing stories that turn people off of church, the faith, and all that. And there's a lot out there that we spent 9 years of our life, you know, going into some pretty crazy places. We even played I think it was like a Satanist museum, and they loved us. We just were real with everybody. That's just how I am in this. I'm real. I don't care what your, beliefs are or whatever else. I'm chill with you. You believe what you believe. I believe what I believe. And, yeah, but, yeah, I hope some, yeah, big ones are coming forward and whatnot. And, uh, I hope, yeah, I hope, I hope so. And again, this is the other reason I don't do politics, because it'll quickly turn like red versus blue and the whole 9 yards. But I hope, yeah, I hope that we're able to, and you know, I don't know. I hope people kind of been waking up on a lot of the politics side, and even that whole Epstein stuff and all that stuff coming out does show some of the dirty stuff. And this is what this reminds me of in this, where it's like, oh, they bought out, and there are certain, I can tell in the eyes of certain officers that took bribes that it is destroying them on the inside to know that they aided in certain things, but they didn't know it. To them, it was like, here's 8 grand for this. Just look the other way while we bring all this product in and ruin families' lives. And you look the other way when this unaliver, the serial unaliver, is on the loose, just going berserk. And it's just, yeah, I mean, it's just kind of gross. But um, I'm hope I don't know. I'm in all this. I hope it really helps this area, because it goes back to even my daughter. If some of you know, with one of my daughters, she went on the whole, she's missing and the whole 9 yards with a she kind of had like some mental health episodes and stuff like that. And when they asked her, they're like, "Do you want her to come back to Mason City and all that for trying to you know for a place to help her and everything?" And I literally looked at him and I was like, "No, this place is in no shape, no form for somebody that has any type of, they're put into a vulnerable spot. Anybody, if you were get dealt the right cards, and like any of us can say, no, I won't, I could never be in that life with illegal narcotics and addiction and all that stuff. But given the right cards at any point, it could be any of us. And this area, while it is in what it's in right now, even in the state that it's in, it's gross. I kind of am skittish to, some of my kids that have certain friends that are falling into that, which then that tries to pull them into that. And so it's really kept my eyes open on that. But I want this area to change. I want it to clean up and everything. And all this just ties in. It's just a big mess, um, and that's why, like, anyone, even when I talk to certain decent law enforcement about this, they always give me the same thing, where first they're like, "Are you okay talking with me?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'm okay talking, I have nothing against anyone on, other than there are some bad eggs. Everyone's got a bad egg at work. Everyone's, I've had bad egg employees here and there, and it's just like, but I don't know. I just hope that this helps bring the awareness needed, and this case being, solved will help with that. And I know I was told basically that if I have to solve this case, I'm going to have to take down the remnants and the leftovers of a legal narcotics ring, which is not my goal. And so if they're salty about that, that's not my goal to do. But we're just here to solve the case that we're working on. It just kind of crosses into some things, and it is what it is. But yeah, I mean, anytime I've talked to different law enforcement officers, they'll kind of roll their eyes like, "Yeah, what you're working on's deep." Like, they kind of have some ideas, on it. And they don't have the time and resource to deal with all the crazy stuff going on, I can see, and then try and spend as much time like we are on this case. Like we're honed in on it. We're just, going pretty hard on it and whatnot. But yeah. And so, Yeah, it's a huge downside to any community. And then the other things that I see is just when it's used for manipulation, when it's used for, you know, in this one I started to see with the politics side of things, I would see like they want certain people running because they have a certain following that wouldn't normally vote for that party, but they can get their following to vote for that party along with the party, and that's how they would get the people they want in in the positions that they want. And then you'd have these guys that are laundering money that are super wealthy that are like, hey, I want this big organization to come to town. I want to approve this. The only way they can approve their investments for their money laundering schemes or whatever their plans are. I mean, it goes back to that I always think, and this is just my opinion, but it goes back to that Prestige Farms when they were trying to come to Mason City. You know, you like I now because of what we investigate, I start to think like, what is the real purpose when they bring that in? Is it because somebody's invested in that company in this area and they're just going to make a bunch of money off of it? Or is there a back end because it's going to bring in the clientele for their illegal narcotics side and they need people to help disperse and they're running low on people to work it? And then you see the other programs that they do, um, and and you see certain ones that bring in certain gang members and stuff like that to our area, and it's just kind of like, is there a reason? So it opens our eyes. So anytime you see any of these big things coming across the table that people don't ever go to those meetings or don't ever vote on them, it makes you wonder. Like right now, one of the ones that's interesting is that in Mason City is that, what is it? Is it like an AI, data center or something like that that's coming in? And I sit there and think like, what is the purpose of this? Is it someone's invested in that company that does these data centers and they get kickbacks for it? For the more they build, the higher percentages they get back. Could it be, what is it or whatever? It just makes me question. And when you look at some of the people that are in leadership and stuff like that, it just, you start to see certain family names connect, certain people from certain eras connect, and then you start to see, all right, I get it, but I mean, obviously those people they can be voted out if people show up, because a lot of people don't show up to local elections and stuff. So it kind of gets me to a little more urge to vote and stuff like that on local elections now. But yeah, so if anyone has any last minute questions, I'll sum up because then I'll be able to take a quick little break before I fire in at 9 o'clock on TikTok, and then I gotta switch my whole setup up for that. But I'm hoping with my new podcast studio, it'll be kind of a cool setup, and then I'll be able to do some multicam stuff and everything. But uh, who could possibly be in the richest five and me? Yeah. who who attacked me pretty quickly right away when I looked into all of this. I'll put my tea down now. But uh yeah, it's pretty interesting. Um and yeah, I guess we'll see what comes from there, but if anyone has any other questions or anything like that, throw down. Um the other one that actually happened in these past few weeks is Flip Investigates is a legal entity now, so that's pretty cool. I actually have it separate from my private investigation stuff's through Clement Investigations with Amanda Clement, and then my media stuff is all under Flip Investigates LLC now. How do you feel you are doing on getting closer to finding Jodi? This the stuff that we have right now and the stuff that's lining up, kind of gives me chills, but it also kind of keeps me up a little at night. And I'll definitely say I can't confirm or deny that I've been to some of these places that we were looking into and everything, and I just, yeah, it's I don't know. It's an eye opener. It's just how do we proceed? How do we get the right attention? Because if some of these dudes are bribed or bought out, and these dudes can I mean, when you're talking the money these guys have, it's unbelievable. But like, how do we play the game of chess to get it to the right people? Because I still am just skittish anytime I'm dealing with even the FBI stuff. I'm like, oh, is this the right division, or is somebody in there gonna just pop in and delay this or cut this out or whatever? But I feel like we've got certain contacts and we're making new contacts the more this is shared. So if you guys share this stuff, it actually helps, kind of get the word out, because I've had some people call me out of the blue and be like, hey, one of my friends happened to send this and I want to give you some pointers on how to submit this here. And so there are, uh, you know, getting it back out there is awesome, but they have to be broken. Yeah, no, it's true. It's some of the stuff with politics and stuff. That's kind of why I sat there. I'm like, notice how in Mason City, how many people, whether it's government positions or even in law enforcement and all that, we're seeing these same dudes that are, from 1995, like all of a sudden pop in and here's our leaders. Or if they aren't from 1995, they're the kids of somebody from 1995. Um, and really ironically, we actually, if he would actually give the video out, the video, one of the videos would have been a major one for a certain election that we had, if that would have come out with something their father did. And but obviously they're probably gonna hold that video till the FBI starts investigating and throwing things out there, and they know they're safe. There are some people, obviously, because of these individuals being so dangerous. One of the, two of the organizations obviously thrown around were the Sons of Silence, obviously, and then the Hells Angels. And ironically, the Hells Angels started to spike up pretty big once we started learning certain names. And so it's like, imagine having a politician that has insane money. They've got donors, they've got money being laundered through different things that their friends are all passing. And then they're able to traffic and do whatever they want as far as bringing some of their illegal stuff in to fundraise. And then they're able to, like, manipulate people with power and money. So like, if they don't like someone, let's intimidate them. Have our guys go over to their house and start smacking on all the doors and flash flashlights in there and call them on the phone and harass them and whatever else. And get people to step down from trying to go up against them, or just weird little tactics that they do. But oh, thanks, Jenny. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, and all the support that you guys have is awesome. The more support that we can get behind it, because it isn't just us. I mean, I wouldn't get anywhere without the leads that you guys give forward. And sometimes, I mean, I do look at, if I had the whole criminal justice, education background, which Amanda, my private investigator, has a master's in that. But if I had some of that mindset, kind of programmed into me, I feel like I probably would have been a lot faster at this. But just more or less because I'm that typical Iowan. We're Iowans that we roll up our sleeves when we want to get something done. That's the true Midwestern, like you sit back and watch something not getting done, not getting done, not getting done, and finally you just put things down and say, I'm rolling up my sleeves and we're just gonna do it so it's done. And so that's what we're doing, and so yeah. If anyone else has any other questions, I'll probably just sum it up here. We're about 8:15 right now. If anyone has any other leads or anything like that as well, feel free to reach out with us. We can keep you confidential if you'd like. Um, yes, I am still always learning. Amanda, yeah. And so yeah, if anyone has anything that they could, from what I've even talked about today, that they could throw in, that would be awesome and helpful. We're taking a lot of steps, even from what we've learned. We've sent in certain things this past week, and then we've got a lot of stuff to do this next week, as well as we've got new side quests always popping in as well. And so trying to get our mind wrapped around this, and then wrapped around another case, and then wrapped around another case, and trying to get into that mindset of like, oh yeah, 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 and so it's pretty it's pretty crazy, but yeah, awesome. Yeah, I appreciate it, Jenny. That's awesome. Uh, but yeah, we go pretty hard on that stuff. So yeah, and again, if you guys need any private investigation needs, you're looking for somebody that you know owes something or whatever else, you need us to find someone, you need us to help with a case here in Iowa or wherever we're certified to look for now. Um, Hit up clementinvestigations.us, I believe. If that's right, Amanda, hit me up. My memory right now is kind of at a, you know, my Easter Sunday between all the food we've eaten and the candy and all that fun. I'm kind of a little tired today, um, but yeah, no, I thank you so much, Christy. Yeah, I appreciate you guys all jumping on, and it's just crazy how I don't know how everyone's still stuck around with all this and able to keep supporting as we keep fighting through this. So hopefully, again, the right people come forward on their own. That would be in a perfect world, but I doubt it. In 30 years hasn't happened, so I don't think they have the I don't think they have the guts to do it personally. So I challenge them, but we'll see what happens. And so, yeah, happy Easter, everyone, and I will see everybody at 9 o'clock on TikTok, and we'll see where that leads us today. So, God bless, and we'll talk to you. I'll see if it's next week or the week after that. So, we'll talk to you guys later. Thanks so much.